Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am your host today, Chris Daughtery, and coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about some recent recruits that Alabama has shown some interest in the 2026 and in the 2025 class, and also we're going to be talking about a little trip down to Tampa that Jalen Milroe and a couple teammates took to get some off-season workouts in. But before we get into that, I did promise shout-outs to you guys. So the most comments in yesterday's video were from Donnie Marlowe and Thomas Lyerly. We appreciate you guys for spamming the F-obbies in the comment section and also just getting in there, chatting about a bunch of stuff. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're just a couple hundred away from hitting that 18,000 subscriber mark. I'm super excited about everything that we have planned here on the Alabama Football Report for you guys, in the offseason and going into the season, so make sure you hit that subscribe button for me right now. The first recruit that we want to talk about today is Xavier Griffin. He's a four-star linebacker recruit in the 2026 class, the number 27 overall, so a bit higher than some of those defensive linemen we talked about yesterday, being in the nearly in the top 25 of this class. Number 27 overall, the number 2 linebacker in the class, as well as the number 7 player from the state of Georgia. I really like this kid's film. He's 6'4", 210 pounds, and on his Twitter page, he's got himself listed as an edge, an outside linebacker, as well as a regular middle linebacker, and that pretty much from his film sums everything up perfectly. He's super, super decisive when it comes to hitting gaps and hitting those holes and making plays on the quarterback. It's just straight 6.5 minutes of nothing but TFL, sacks, and QB hurries. He makes really, really quick reads. And when he's on the edge, he plays both standing up and with his hand in the dirt. So I think going on the lines of the linebacker commits that Alabama already has in the 2025 class, I think he fits in the same. He's got a lot of versatility. He can play a lot of different positions, whether that is middle linebacker, whether that's going out and playing some kind of like on a little bit of the slot in coverage. I think Kane Womack really loves versatility in players like that, and it shows with all the linebacker commits that Alabama already has in the 2025 class. Some of the schools he's visited so far, he's visited 12 in total. These are the most prominent 10 right here. He's taken 3 visits to Georgia, all unofficial, by the way. No official visits so far for him. He's just in that 2026 class, so ways away from getting some of those official visits. But 3 visits to Auburn, 2 to Florida State, 2 to Tennessee, 2 to Clemson, 2 to Georgia Tech, and then Ohio State, Alabama, Florida, and North Carolina all have 1 visit, as well as USF and Vanderbilt also have a visit from him. He's got 30 offers so far, for a 2026 guy. That's very, very impressive. It sounds like Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State are the early leaders for him in his recruitment. Now, I want you guys to pick a segment, basically, for us. We're kind of in a lull period. We're going to have some official visits coming up starting soon, starting next week. But I want to break down some position groups for different videos on the channel here. So I want you guys to let me know, it is the pinned comment on today's video, what position groups should we break down here on the channel for you guys? Let me know in the comment section, and if that ad comes here on YouTube, that's fine, ignore it. Go down to the comment section at that pinned comment and reply to it. Let me know what position group you want us to break down here. The next recruit on the list today, Anthony Jones. He's a 5-star edge rusher, also in the 2026 class, the number 1 edge rusher and the number 1 player from the state of Alabama in that class down there in Mobile at St. Paul's Episcopal High School. This kid, another very, very athletic player. He plays for the most part just as an edge rusher, but like I said, very athletic. They have used him on the goal line in that Wildcat. They've put him at running back. There's even some plays where he was kind of more like a little bit of a tight end role, I guess you could say. A little bit lined up kind of in line and just going out in those red zone situations. And he's another guy that can play a little bit outside playing coverage. And with this Kane Womack defense, the 4-2-5, he's going to ask, I believe really that Wolf position mainly, to get out in coverage and be able to cover some guys, and you got to be super athletic to do that. Now, one of my favorite plays on his highlight reel, he lined up at kind of like that fullback, hammerback position, kind of right offline behind the right tackle. And as a blocker, he made contact with his guy right at the line of scrimmage, and he drove him 10 yards downfield and just pile drived him into the dirt. That shows a lot of his physicality that he brings and just overall the versatility, what he can do for Alabama, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, his visits that he's taken so far, there's a little bit of conflicting information here on his On3 profile. It says he's taken 5 visits to Alabama so far. Joseph Hastings, an amazing writer for Bama Online, he wrote an article the other day saying that he's been to Alabama 10 times. So I don't know if it's 10, I don't know if it's 5, but he's been there a few times, and that's a good sign for Alabama, I think. His profile also says he's taken 5 visits to Auburn, 4 to LSU, and 3 visits to Georgia. He's also taken some visits to FSU, Miami, and Clemson, all just one time. And he plans on taking another visit to Auburn, some visits to Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas coming up sometime this summer. We'll see, how his recruitment goes on, but he's still another one of those 2026 guys, so there's still a long way to go in his recruitment. The next player we want to talk about in the 2025 class today, that being Kaleb Edwards. He's the number 8 overall tight end in the 2025 class, number 182 overall. He is a 4-star a 4-star recruit, and the number 16 player out of the state of California. He's 6'6", 235 pounds, so really big kid, still a junior going into his senior year here. And all he's got so far is his sophomore film on his huddle page, but I really liked what I saw from him. He can line up kind of all over the field when he's kind of closer to the line, but still outside. That's more when they're on that near hash. He's lined up in the slot, and he's also lined up in line, just kind of that blocking tight end, or also just to be able to go straight up the seam and catch some deep balls over some guys. He's, like I said, a really big guy, 6'6", 230 pounds, and kudos to his quarterback, too, because he's dotted up a lot of passes for him over some defenders. He's a really big guy. He's got that jump ball ability, and there's one of my favorite plays from his huddle film. It took 6 guys to bring him down. He was kind of streaking up the side. He was covered by one guy, and that guy he drug him for about 5 or 6 yards before the rest of his teammates were able to get over there and help bring him down. And as well, he's able to catch the ball in traffic. He's got really strong hands. So those are some of the main things that I really like about him. His top 6 schools right now, Alabama, as well as the visits right here. He's going to be taking a visit to Alabama on June 17th, Auburn on June 10th, Oregon on June 21st, as well as Texas on June 7th. He already took a visit to UCLA May 10th through the 12th, and he's also going to be going to Washington on May 31st. And just another fun fact for you, he's already been selected to the 2025 All-American Bowl in San Antonio. That'll be taking place in January. So a really big target for Alabama. We'd love to see him in this 2025 recruiting class. We'll give a shout out to our sponsor today. That is Fanatics. They've got NFL rookie jerseys for you ready to go. A couple guys, J.C. Latham, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Tyrion Arnold, Dallas Turner, any of those Alabama guys that you can think of that got drafted this year and are able to make a name for themselves in the NFL this year. Go to chatsports.com/NFL jersey. You might have to go and filter it out to be able to actually find some of those guys, but they've got everybody seemingly that has signed the contract already. They don't have Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, but a lot of Alabama players you can pick from there. Once again, that is chatsports.com/NFL jersey. Last thing I want to talk about on today's show, Jalen Milroe, as well as some other Alabama players, went down to Tampa And they worked out with House of Athlete with Vince Sanders. He's the director of recruiting down there. So from left to right on this picture right here, you've got Justice Haynes, Emmanuel Henderson, Jaron Hamilton, Jalen Milroe, and Richard Young. CJ Dupree and Ty Simpson also went down there. And they also got another visit from former Alabama wide receiver, now Eagles wide receiver, and I guess number 2 now, bag getter for the Eagles. Devontae Smith went down there and worked out with them as well. And also, 3 out of the 5 days, they got quarterback guru John Gruden to work out and help some of those guys. You know, there were over 40 players from multiple different schools there. So it wasn't just Alabama players, but I love seeing, you know, as a group, especially offensive players together, working out together, especially with those trainers in the off season. And one of the cool things was they said that they were going out there, they were working out super hard as a group, all 40 guys all at once. And then after, for about an hour and a half, the Alabama players would go out to the field, and Jalen Milroe would just straight up run the offense. And they weren't just, you know, standing at the 20-yard line. They were consistently moving the ball downfield just like in game situations. So I really love seeing that from the team in the offseason. A lot of videos out about Jalen Milroe, you know, kind of shortening up his throwing motion. Hopefully that can make him more accurate and being able to see the field as well and just be comfortable in this new Kalen DeBoer offense. Let me know in the comment section right now, guys. We're going to talk about, just seeing this made me think about the wide receiver group. I want to know right now in the comment section, who is the most underrated wide receiver on this team for Alabama? I think there's a lot of really good names that you can look at. And especially coming up next, Emmanuel Henderson and Jaron Hamilton, 2 top guys, I think, that, you know, they're probably not the top 3 wide receivers, probably to trot out there in game 1 versus Western Kentucky, but I think they're also going to make a name for himself. So let me know who you think is the most underrated wide receiver in this class or on this team right now. Now, Yo Murphy, he's the VP of Pro Sports, House of Highlights. This is what he had to say about Emmanuel Henderson and Jaron Hamilton, and I just think it speaks to, you know, who they are as players. He said, those guys, E-Man and Turbo, they just work. They take direction very well. They look at you dead in the eye and focus on what you're saying and how to do it correctly. It's humbling to work with guys like that have such athletic ability and God-given talent, but understanding that it is all God-given. This is the Alabama wide receiver depth chart right now. And we talked about Jaron Hamilton and Emmanuel Henderson. Hamilton's only had 6 snaps last year, no stats. Emmanuel Henderson, he's got 53 career snaps in the past 2 seasons, but he's only got 1 reception for 14 yards in 2022. And it really sucks Jalen Hale is out with that injury. You know, fingers crossed, hopefully maybe later in the season, possibly if Alabama can make a playoff run, he can be back. But I think there's a lot of guys on this Alabama wide receiver depth chart who can make a name for himself besides the starters. Like I said, Jaron Hamilton, I really love the hype that we got from Caleb Odom, as well as Cole Adams. I think he's a guy that Alabama can use in the slot in a lot of different kinds of ways. And I think we would be remiss not to talk about him. And, you know, one of the top wide receiver recruits in the country, Ryan Williams. I don't necessarily, he came in the summertime. He wasn't there for spring, so he isn't necessarily as caught up on the playbook as, you know, some of the other guys can be or probably are. But I'm super excited to see what Ryan Williams can do for this team in 2024. Is he going to end up being one of those starters eventually later on in the season? I don't know. But I think he's a guy that's got enough talent. He can get on the field, you know, sometime midway through the season probably for Alabama. And there's just so much wide receiver talent in this room. But a lot of it is just inexperienced. And the only way to get experience is to be able to play and get some of those, you know, kinks worked out. So we'll see what happens for Alabama in 2024 at that wide receiver position.